There's Tampa Bay. Who is this Brady guy?
I heard. Yeah,
Is he new?
I saw. Greg Warren tweeted that somebody should think about doing a story about this Tom Brady guy.
Yeah, let me talk to my people at ESPN and see if they want to do that.
They might.
Who do you got winning? Or
Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Yeah, Chiefs are gonna win. What do you think?
All right. I say Tampa Bay just because Brady, the Brady story is amazing.
Okay. Well,
that's all I got. Let's get to our first guest. We'll take his opinion. It's Chris Ayres, head coach at Princeton, 2020 Ivy League Coach of the Year. Chris, how you doing?
Good. You?
I'm great, man. First question, we'll get it out of the way. Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I'll go with the Chiefs.
All right. Back to back, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're looking for me to speak more about it, I actually know nothing about any other sport than wrestling.
Yes.
My coaches kind of bust my chops all the time, so I just picked a name that you guys just mentioned.
One of the
So
two.
I have heard of Tom Brady though, which made me second guess my decision right now. So yeah, I'll go with the
That's
Chiefs.
all right. I'm about like you. I like the UFC, but I don't really watch football. Even though, but I get really into it at the very end of the playoffs. I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, they should do this and that. You know what the hell you're talking about, Mark.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it, Chris. I guess we'll start off with, I guess there was more news from this past weekend with wrestling. It wasn't competition, but it was there's Captain's Cup coming up. It's the women's equivalent of the RTC Cup. There's going to be a dual meet tournament going on. And the 6 women drafted teams this weekend. I know you saw a little bit of it, but, you know, what'd you think about if you saw, and just this concept of the RTC Cup in general? I mean, there's Captain's Cup, but yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I joke. It took a pandemic for wrestling to sort of evolve, basically. So I'm really loving seeing what you guys are starting here, and then the other events that are going on. I think this is just a spin-off of that, and it's really amazing. I found the draft so interesting. I thought there was a lot of really good personalities on there. I think you look at like Tamara, who's like kind of crazy and laughing and stuff, and then you go down to Sarah, who had like her Excel sheet, and she was kind of super serious. But I thought there was just, you know, what struck me about the draft was there's just a lot of personalities, and I think that's great for the sport. And imagine we hadn't evolved and we didn't include them, we'd be missing out on this right now. So I'm really psyched to see this cup. I think the teams are great. The teams that were picked. What other interesting thing that I saw, seemed like a theme throughout the draft, was it wasn't about picking the best girl. It was like who they had a relationship with or trained with or was on their team. I felt like there was just a ton of loyalty in sort of the picks. And so I think you're going to get a very exciting tournament, because I think a lot of the teams, they all know each other a little bit. So I'm really psyched to see it. I thought the draft was great, and I think the teams, it's going to be an amazing event.
Yeah, absolutely excited for it. And you were at the RTC Cup, right? And one thing that makes it different is, and I mentioned this during the draft, but you know, in these events over the last 6, 8, however many months, these pandemic events where there's no fans, it's kind of different inside. And when it's like a card, right, the Burroughs versus Taylor, you hear the coaches and a few other people, but not much. But when it's a team, you get the 6 or 8 or 10 people on the bench with the coaches and everything else. You can hear every word they say, and they get pretty pumped up. And I've seen these women wrestle in some, not the World Cup in the older ladies, but at Fargo, they wrestle in the team competitions. And, man, they are nuts on the sideline cheering for their teams, and it's really exciting the way they cheer, get excited, root on their teammates, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'll say the best event I've ever been to for wrestling was actually the first year of the New Jersey girls region. So I've been to a lot of things. I was at the Olympic Championships. I've been to a lot of things, but so my wife and I and several other people helped kind of push to get a state tournament in New Jersey. And so we're going to have this regional tournament. Hasn't been done before. We're scared. Is anyone going to show up? What's the atmosphere going to be like? There's going to be 6 mats. We have no idea what we're walking into, like zero. So we pull into the parking lot. The parking lot is full. I mean, it was crazy. So I was like, had a sigh of relief there. Like, okay, there's people here. But the next cool thing was they had the best refs in New Jersey. But why it was the best event was the level of excitement in that gym was the most I've ever felt in any wrestling event. There was parents crying because their daughters had the opportunity to compete and earn a spot at the state tournament. So and that, again, I don't like generalizations in terms of girls and men, but it was just different. And I don't know if it was because it was the first event and it was so good, but the excitement level in the room. This is the first event of its kind at this level.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to see. I mean, I'm pumped. I wish I was in there. I tried to get in there.
I
Tried
know.
to be
I'm
a coach,
sorry.
but it's all women. No, that's all. So when you told me it's all women's coaches, I was like, that's even better.
Yeah.
But so I think even you guys are going to be surprised at the level of excitement in the room for these matches, because I'm definitely going to be watching. I think it's going to be an amazing, as I said earlier, keep repeating amazing, but amazing event. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I guess sticking with this theme, right? Women's wrestling. You're more than an enthusiast, right? You're a pusher of it, right? I don't know. There's a better word for that, I'm sure, but you're and your daughter wrestles. I guess explain to me. And we were kind of talking about it offhand before. How you've grown with your passion for growing women's wrestling.
Yeah, I think I told you before we were on air. I said, you know, even if my daughter quit tomorrow, I would still be as passionate as I am pushing for women's wrestling, because I just seen what it's done for her, and I've just become more exposed and more educated because she's been involved with the sport. Here's the bottom line: the biggest thing that struck me, and I'm actually embarrassed about how ignorant I was to it, was when she started doing it. It was I saw the benefit that she was getting from the sport, like I got from the sport, and it never occurred to me, like, why wouldn't I put my daughter in this sport when it's so convenient? My son had already been wrestling, which is the worst, which I kind of pushed him into. He probably didn't even want to wrestle, and so there's my daughter. I didn't even really think that she could do it, but once I see her in it and I see what's happening to her as she's doing the sport, I'm just like, my God, what is wrong? Why have we ignored the other half of humanity for so long, and sort of actually pushing them to wrestle? I think
Yeah.
we've sort of accepted them, but they've had to come to it on their own. It wasn't like anyone was saying, hey, girls, you should wrestle. So I think that's what we try to do now, is just, I try to do my best to help provide opportunities for women. And I know that opportunities grow the numbers as well. So that's my main stake in all this, is I want to use my coaching platform to help advance the sport. And quite honest, like, I'll be honest with you right now, right here live, that I'm not certain that this isn't what I'm supposed to do in wrestling. I know that the Princeton team has come a long way, and that's what I spend a major amount of time on. But when I get down to like my core and what's my purpose here, that's a huge purpose. But it might be women's wrestling when this is all said and done. So yeah, I'm forever, when my daughter's done, I'm going to be pushing. And I think that I think it's so important for the health of our sport. And I'm going to do everything I can to provide as many opportunities as I can, or help provide them, or educate.
I'm curious how old your daughter is now, how old she was when she got into wrestling, and why did she do it on her own? Did you maybe say, oh, maybe you want to try, or was it a friend, or how did it?
Yeah, you're killing me. So I'll
I'm
have to tell
sorry.
the story. Oh, it's all right. So she's a senior right now in high school. So she's going to be 18 this coming month in February. I think she was in seventh grade. So how it all happened was so interesting. Again, I'm embarrassed to tell the story. My son was wrestling, and so she was starting to ask, "Can I come help?" My son was maybe in first grade, so he was in like the very beginner group, and she would say, "Hey, can I come to practice and help with Atticus's practice?" And so I said, "Yeah, come down." And she's like, "Oh, I'll watch the kids, make sure they're behaving and stuff." And I'm like, "Great." And so, never thinking that she wants to wrestle, not 1 second, like in my head, just being a dumb rockhead wrestler. And so then all of a sudden she's like asking, "Hey, can I come to your college guys' practices to watch?" So finally, I've been beaten over the head by her like 7 times already, kind of hinting to me that she likes wrestling, but I don't pick it up. So I'll never forget. My wife and I are in the kitchen, and I'm not sure who said it, but I was like, "Hey, I think Chloe wants to wrestle." And we were both like, "Yeah, I think she does too. She keeps asking to go to these practices." So we pulled her in and we said, "Hey, Chloe, like, do you want to wrestle?" She's like, oh my God, yeah, I so want to wrestle. Can I wrestle? And I was like, wait, I was like, why didn't you just ask sooner? She goes, because I didn't think you wanted me to wrestle, to me. And
Wow.
so, I'd been putting on, yeah, I'd been putting off a vibe, and that like I just kind of ignored her in wrestling, and so she didn't think I wanted her to wrestle. And so, I think back to that, and I'm kind of, like like I said, you got me, Bader. I'm a little embarrassed by the story, but I think it's important to tell, because I think other dads or other male wrestlers out here have to realize that again, like these girls want to wrestle. They want to be a part of this amazing sport. We know I even think it's funny calling it a sport. It's just something different. I don't know. It's a lifestyle, what you want to call it. But we need to have these girls. We have to push for these girls to be involved because it's so beneficial for them. So that's the story of how she got to wrestling, and then she became obsessed. It was like watching my own career happen happened before my eyes. I was like, wow, she's like, so she quit other sports on her own. I was like, you could do wrestling or not, or she did cross country as well, and a little bit of field hockey. She's like, I just want to wrestle. So that's where we are now. She loves it. She's getting a lot out of it, and hopefully she has some opportunities at the next level down the road.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a daughter. She'll be 4 pretty soon, and this was about 6 7 years ago. The story you're telling, right? But my group, I'm like, yes, I want her to wrestle. I don't want her to know how badly I want her to wrestle. Actually, right? There's like that, like because I don't want her to be forced upon it. But I think in that time, even a mind shift has changed between like I don't think you didn't want your daughter to wrestle. Correct me if I'm wrong. You just never maybe it didn't cross your mind.
Yeah, well, I didn't see it very much in that level, right?
Yeah.
So a middle school girl, I was fully aware of, Olympic level because I've been involved with that. And this is just being a rockhead again, not doing math, that those Olympic level girls had to, start
Start somewhere.
sometime sooner, right? Yeah. So, I had seen like, and then how do you do it too is like a different thing. Meant like, okay, she's in the boys practice at the time, even that short period of a time ago, it was a little different than actually, no, it was a lot different than it is at the current moment. Again, too, there was no state tournament, so there wasn't many girls wrestling in the state. Even early on, I remember we went to Freestyle states maybe her freshman year, and there was no girls in her weight for the girls bracket, and there might have been 4 girls that showed up. There was a lot more girls that wrestled in the state. There wasn't enough avenues of education for them to know that these opportunities existed. So, we went to that freestyle state tournament. There's one girl, so they put her in the boys bracket. This is her first freestyle tournament. It's freestyle states. She's got these hammers from Jersey,
Yeah.
in her weight class. And I was, I put her in, and she wrestled one match. I got actually like, she was very inexperienced, and it was a little frightening, but just because of her inexperience, not that she was a girl.
Yeah.
But it was, it's so different now. The states are like packed with weights now. And so there are opportunities for girls to see other girls wrestling. There's opportunities for parents to see girls wrestling. So I think that's really what changed is all the opportunities that are coming up for women.
Yeah, it's a great time for women's wrestling, and it's only getting better. I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but I guess explain what's happening at the NCAA level and specifically D1 and how soon. I think you said there's 2 teams currently, but
Yeah.
when do you think there will be people competing and teams, and what's that going to look like, and how soon can we think hopefully it'll happen?
Yeah. So women's wrestling is emerging sports status, which means that if they meet X number of teams, then it will become a national championship sponsored by the NCAA. So that's what we're working towards right now. D1. So most of the teams are not Division One, D2, D3, NAIA. There's 2 D1 programs right now in Sacred Heart and God, I'm drawing a blank on the other one.
Presbyterian?
Yeah, that's right, Presbyterian. And so there's only 2. So there's not a lot of those schools right now. So what we're doing, you really need to talk to the other heirs. My wife is like into this, very deep into this. And so what we're trying to do is just educate and prepare for the day we get out of the pandemic. and schools potentially want to add, women's wrestling, which it's funny. It's like the state tournament too. Um, when you're in it, like we're in it, you know what the future is going to be. We knew there would be a state tournament. We knew when the state tournament was added, the numbers would go through the roof in the state because it's happened in every other state.
Mm-hmm.
When this thing takes off, there's going to be a D1 women's wrestling tournament. There's going to be a Division I NCAA women's wrestling tournament sometime in our lifetime. It will happen.
Yeah.
And I know this. The speed at which it happens is the frustrating thing for people like myself and my wife and Kira Berry and Jackie Davis. Jackie Peppelman run this educational group, D1 Women Wrestling, and how they know that it's going to be a tournament down the road. So we're really just trying to educate and prepare people for the day that their school is ready to add it, that they're ready to give them the support that they need to add the programs.
Do you think we'll have a women's D1 wrestling tournament in the 2020s?
That's a great question. Well, so if it's anything like the state tournaments, how they've caught on, which has been, it's been so fast. If it's anything like that, we will definitely see an NCAA. I think we'll see an NCAA women's wrestling national championship in the 2020s. I would love to see a D1 women's wrestling championships in the 2020s. What happens with emerging sports is that they're all lumped together in the first championship. They get to a certain number. There's D1, D2, D3. Once schools get enough to have their own championships, then they break off basically and become D1, D2, D3 championships.
When our daughters, like I was going to say, when our daughters are our age or, grown up and they're doing this thing, we're going to talk about the roaring 20s when women's wrestling took off and yeah, hopefully.
I love that. That's great.
Yep.
That's great.
I
might steal that, Bader.
Please do.
When I think about, I don't know, trying to see around the next corner with this, I mean, we're going to have eventually a women's NCAA championships that is freestyle, right? And a men's NCAA championships that is folk style. And I'm curious to know how you think just a wrestling fan base in general will think about that. Will the two NCAA styles maybe become closer together? Is it possible that the NCAA wants women's wrestling to look like folk style because that's what the men look like? I just saw that they, I think, put in a rule that women have to wear headgear, which they never have, but now because it's NCAA they do. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how that'll unfold?
That is a great question, and I'm not really sure. I think the people in women's wrestling are pretty sticking firm that it should be freestyle. I'm kind of behind that too because it's a pretty easy transition. And then I think I don't think that NCAA men's will move from Scholastic. And this is such a funny topic, but it causes great debate. Honestly, it gets you talking about wrestling. I mean, the fights we have in our office about freestyle versus folk style are pretty crazy. But I think women will stay freestyle, and I think men will stay folk style, and I think that everyone will be okay with it. I think there always needs to be rule tweaks. Some of the rules are just, I think we could all agree, are not great on both sides. Yeah. But I think as long as they keep evolving. But hey, let's look at the freestyle rules right now. Like, as I complain about them a lot, there's a lot of things that frustrate me. But geez, they are the best they've been in a long, long time. We've moved away from ball grabs and clinches and just really ridiculous rules I remember going to tournaments, like senior level tournaments, and there would be rule changes at the tournament. Like they would pull us together and be like, for today, we are changing all the rules. And so, but I think as long as they stay consistent, I don't think fans will have much of an issue with it. There's a lot of great questions. Then it's like practice too is going to be totally different. Yeah. If there's a men's and women's team at the same school, that's a great question. I haven't given much thought to that though.
I mean, one of the other things that I notice when I look at college women's schedules is their wrestling schedule has all these USA Wrestling and international events just built right into the calendar, and it's not like just the normal whatever November to March schedule that men's NCAA wrestling is. And that's like I feel like that's a huge developmental asset for a college program where, maybe you have your 10 starters for a dual meet, but you send everybody to juniors and U23s, and the ones who are still junior eligible, like they're competing for that age. It's just, I don't know. It's such a more seamless integration of college wrestling into the international styles that it's something that I kind of, man, I'm like, that'd be so cool if men's wrestling could in some ways, I don't know, build that into the calendar and get the schools supporting and, and behind like that international movement. But I don't know if we'll ever see that, but I love that about women's wrestling.
Well, the good thing about that too is you bring up a great point, is for the schools that, like for us at Princeton, we have one girl on the roster, Dimitri Yankopoulos. So she's on our men's roster. She trains in the RTC as well. Her schedule is based around the USA Wrestling events. The fortunate thing is, like, there's now more girls being admitted into some of these schools that are in our region. So now we're connecting everyone together so they can actually wrestle each other, but then also go to these events for USA Wrestling. So when we think about scheduling for any women that come into our program, we're looking at exactly that. And if it were collegiate, it would be almost impossible to set something up like that. So the freestyle piece, you make a great point. And I think the men are doing better on the world level now because of the RTCs. There's just more freestyle wrestling happening at the colleges than there used to be. And you're right. I mean, if they switch to freestyle, the NCAA, I think that would be big problems for the rest of the world in relation to dealing with the United States in terms of how good we would be. But man, I love collegiate wrestling so much. It's so hard for me to go say that I want that. It's like a little selfish. But anyway,
I think I'm ready to say it. When I first, my whole life I grew up wrestling folk style with a little freestyle here or there, and when I moved here to Flow, I was all folk style. And I think over the last 2 or 3 years I've shifted, and I think I like freestyle better. And I definitely think the criteria rules are better than non-criteria rules. And you can argue, tied at the end, fine, give the criteria riding time point, because it is exciting.
Yeah.
And it used to suck with the ball draws and the gimmicks and all that.
You like the criteria, like whoever scored last or the most points.
Whatever it is,
wrestling?
Well, the reason I like it is because it forces action, right? And now somebody's always losing. It's the same thing's been going on Twitter for the last, week or two, right? Nonstop. So I'm not saying anything a lot of people haven't said, but yeah, freestyle is just it's so exciting now. The 6 minutes is action packed. Where Christian said something the other night on Twitter, like a 1-1 overtime victory in college wrestling kind of, well, it sucks, right? Usually it's like, okay, each guy got an escape and they hand fought for 7 minutes, and what's that?
Or they scrambled for a long time.
Maybe they did, but I would venture to say more times than not, it's boring and sometimes it is a 1-1 awesome scramble fest, but and that's the one thing I like about folk style a lot is the scrambling, right? It's super fun to watch but there's a trade-off. So I don't want to hijack this. If you have another point about it, you can make it, but I don't want to spend all day talking about criteria.
Yeah, I'll skip it because no one's ever going to come to a good decision
I know.
on this. I think there's benefit. I think that both can learn from each other, though. I think if there was some melding of both, I think that would be the perfect rule set, and I just don't know if we'll ever get there. So probably not worth talking about.
Maybe one day we could debate it for hours, but okay, I want to move on to a little bit different subject, but a lot different. But Greg Strobel, I believe he was your college coach, right, at Lehigh. You had a lot of great things to say about him. He recently passed, which was unfortunate. I guess just I'll kind of give you the floor, but talk about your experience with Greg as a coach and probably mentor and everything else.
Yeah, so I was with Greg for 4 years in college, and then about 6 years post-college, I coached with him. He's probably had the most impact on my life in wrestling, and one of the most impactful people that in my life ever, beyond wrestling. And he was just he was amazing. And I sort of base my coaching philosophy around what he was doing, which was basically he's using wrestling as a vehicle to really teach life lessons, but it's also trying to get you to reach your goals in the sport. So it was always a little bit. It was not always a little bit. It was always more than the winning and losing. There was always lessons to be learned from all aspects of being in the sport of wrestling. So I took a lot of that from him and in my own coaching, and then just his impact. I I told you this, Bader. I don't know how many people know. I wasn't very good in high school. I didn't place in the New Jersey State tournament. You know, I trained really hard. I knew technique. But it wasn't really until I got to Coach Strobel that it really changed a lot for me. And it was really his outlook. At the time, I was so serious about wrestling, and it was it was almost life or death, right?
Yeah.
I put so much pressure on like placing in states or winning in states. And then I meet this guy, and this is the time of like, Big Ten's the best, and there's Iowa wrestling, and you think that wrestling is just this sport of grinding, and it's not fun at all. It's just you're toiling away, cutting weight. So and so I was really serious, and I put a lot into it. Like I said, it was like life or death. I would lose, and I would be messed up for the whole week if I lost. Like really had trouble because I was so upset that I lost. But then I met him, and he was just totally different. It was incredible. He was the first person that I ever heard say like wrestling should be fun. He had this whole speech. It was his first speech. His first speech he gave. He was like, everyone. He's like, we need to have fun in this program. Wrestling's supposed to be fun. He's like, if you put two kids in a room, they're going to start wrestling. 2 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
And they're going to be laughing and rolling around and trying to kick the crap out of each other, but they're going to be having fun doing it. And you know what messes up wrestling? He goes, coaches mess up wrestling. So then you throw the coach into the mix, and he gets everybody all serious, talking about winning and stuff. And then the kids hate wrestling because it's not fun anymore. So he was the first one I'd ever heard say like wrestling should be fun. And so that really struck me that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And so I had to take time. I had to like reprogram my brain basically to like say that wrestling is fun, which at its core it was. When I first started, I thought it was fun. And then I got more serious, and then it became less fun, and so it became more like a job. So when I got to him, his approach to it all was it just freed me. I just put less pressure on myself, and I was able to do great things. Also, his training methods were different. He had coached the Olympic team. He had been the coach at Foxcatcher. I had never heard of a taper before. Like the way it was done in high school is like, if the state tournament was coming up, that's when you trained really hard.
Yeah.
Like a few weeks before states, we got to get ready for states. You bring in all these killers from other schools. And by the time you get to states, you're dead. So this is a great story. I'm sorry I'm going on so long.
Please
This is
do.
my first year with Coach Strobel. So he's it's before the EIWA tournament, and we have a pretty good team. We're very young now, and man, 2 weeks out, the practices are like so easy, and I'm like, what? I'm like, what's going on? And I'm nervous, right? So I would take ownership for my own training, and I would say something too if I felt like I wasn't getting what I needed. I always did that. I just was like my own best advocate on what I thought I needed to be successful. So I literally walk into his office, and I'm like, I think he's given up on the team. Like the practices are like so toned down, So I step into his office. I say, hey, coach, like what's going on? I was like, we have Easterns like in a week and a half or 2 weeks, and that practice was like. That was like one of the easiest practices of the year. It was so short. It was an hour and 15 minutes. We were training for 2 hours in the middle of the season. And I said, hey, what are we doing here? Are we going to be? He goes, trust me. He goes, trust me. He goes, it's actually, we're going to start doing less. And he took the time to explain like what a taper was. And he was the Olympic coach and coach at Foxcatcher. So that gave him the credibility where I was like, I'm just going to put all my trust in this guy. And so I was like seeded maybe 4th or 5th in the conference. I made the finals, I qualified for NCAAs. I had the best performance of my life, really. As you can imagine, like 2 years prior, I didn't place in New Jersey States, and then I'm in the finals of the EIWAs. So it changed my life and my perspective. And it's just a funny thing, like how that impact has stayed with me to this day, where the lessons he taught me, I'm trying to give to my guys as well. There's so much I could talk about him, so I apologize for going on. I just miss the guy, to be honest with you. I used to call him a lot, and just for advice about the team. And so it's tough. It's tough that he's gone.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. When he said it should be fun, it's so funny. Like it's so simple, right? But you're like so taken back, and the way you explain, I'm like, yeah. When I was a little kid, it was fun as hell. When I got to college.
Yeah.
it kind of sucked, or like I wasn't happy unless I was miserable, right? I don't know. Did it take a while to accept that, or like, okay, I hear what you're saying. The words, I understand them. I'm processing them, but did you actually get them? And when could you actually apply it? I guess.
Uh, I think I tried to apply it right away. I was very coachable. Like if a coach told me something, I did it. I didn't, except for that time when I thought practices were too easy. But generally speaking, I really tried to apply what was taught to me, and I was a student of the sport, so I really tried to reframe my perspective on the sport when he was saying things like that, to get myself to the point where. And here's the other thing: he was such a happy guy. I mean, he had this thing. Attitude was his thing. He's like, you get to wake up in the morning, you get to choose your attitude. I mean, it's incredible the stories I could tell about his attitude. So he was having fun. I mean, we would lose and he'd laugh sometimes. Like, it was just like I'll tell you another story. So we're in this is we start off the season. We beat Clarion and we beat Edinburgh. This is his first year, and we have a bunch of young guys. And I think Clarion might have been ranked ninth at the time. We were ranked like 45th, right? So we come out of the gates crazy good. So we go out to his alma mater, Oregon State. We wrestle Oregon State. And it was a bad trip. We shouldn't have done this, but we wrestled a tournament the day or 2 days before. We had two guys out of the lineup. Long story short, we get shut out. So we don't know this coach. Like, it's his first year. So we just got our butts kicked in his old school. He was a two-time national champ there, one of the best wrestlers ever for Oregon State. I'm thinking we just embarrassed this guy in his home gym. So we're all sitting in the locker room, like heads down, like looking at each other, like, when's this guy going to come in and just rip into us, because we're expected to get chewed out. So he comes in, he goes, I'll never forget, this kind of set the tone. He goes, well, guys, that could have been a lot worse. He's like, you could have all got pinned. He said you could have all got pinned. He's like, we're going to move on for this. We're going to get better. He's like, if this is the worst thing that happens to us in our life, then we're living a pretty good life. So it kind of relieved the pressure there too, where it was like, okay, like, performance isn't like, winning isn't everything. There's other things to this game. And so, yeah, I try to take what he gave me, and I really try to run with it. And I think it took years though to really have fun with it. And I was influenced, actually. I probably started to have more fun with wrestling as a coach. I had some interesting teams at Lehigh with Letters and Cooperman and Zink. They had a different approach, and it was kind of funny. And they made a lot of fun of each other. And so that was kind of different for me. But yeah, so there's been a lot of evolutions in how I perceive wrestling, I guess.
Guys, that could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, basically.
Good for him.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Can I give one more plug? So I just want. Yeah. So Strobel had this thing where he'd make his college weight every year on his birthday.
Oh yeah.
So he every year he made his weight on his birthday, and so it's been tough. He passed in October because of COVID. We haven't had a memorial yet. So like, I just for months now I've been just stewing about like him and what can I do in his memory. And so it dawned on me that like, hey, we should do a fundraiser. So basically I went to school. I was at Lehigh at the same time as his daughter, Jennifer. So Jennifer Strobel and I were at Lehigh at the same time. So we were friends. So I called her up and I said, hey, Jen, I got this idea. I was like, let's do this fundraiser in your dad's name where you make a college wrestling weight and you ask people to donate based on like how many pounds you lost. So people could donate per pound.
Yeah.
So it's funny. So we've been working on this with USA Wrestling. USA Wrestling has set up a leadership program in Coach Strobel's name for the senior level athletes. So we're starting this fundraiser tomorrow, actually, where we're going to get people to participate to lose weight, and then they're going to get donors. And so it's going to be an awesome event to really try to raise money for this USA Wrestling Leadership Academy in Coach's name. So just want to put that plug out there. Be on the lookout. We're going to create some social media stuff. So Bader, if you got to lose a few pounds, you can maybe get on board.
Funny you said that. The holidays were a little too good to me. Not crazy, but it's like eating and drinking a little more than I should. So I'm not
Awesome.
opposed to being a part of this game. I'm about 5 pounds above where I normally am, and that's about 5-7 pounds above where I should be. So let's start with you. Where do you weigh right now, and how low are you going to get? Let's get personal.
Oh man, so I am the most I've weighed since my junior summer of college, where I was trying to go up to 57. So the weight I had on my junior year when I was trying to go up to 157 was a lot better than the weight I have on right
Yes,
now. So
yes.
I'm about a soft 180 right now.
Soft
So
180.
I'm gonna shoot for 165. You have to pick a college weight. I think I can get. I usually weigh literally. The holidays were rough. I usually weigh around 72 to 74.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go 65. So you have 30 days to make the weight. It's gonna end the week before NCAAs. It starts 30 days before that. So it's gonna be good. I'm ready for it though. I need to add some discipline to my life in relation to getting this weight off.
I'm sure. Is there like going to be like plastics and saunas at the end, or is it like you're just going to
No,
naturally
but
like get down to this weight?
no, so we're working with USA Wrestling, so there's some clear guidelines on how to do things safely. We
Yeah,
do not want anyone, we
good,
do not want anyone in plastics or anything like that. That
good.
is not the point of this. And the funny thing about Greg too, to kind of bring it back to him, he always said this thing. He's like, you have to have a life. You want to lead a life. You want to have a lifetime of good habits, basically. The reason he can make his college wrestling weight at 190 was because he spent his whole life close enough to the weight.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it wasn't like he went to a sauna and cut down to 190. It was like, he would take 3 weeks or so. He'd be 7 pounds over his weight. He'd take 3 or 4 weeks to get down to 190, and he'd feel good about that. So yeah, it's not like this is about healthy approaches to managing your weight.
We're
So
not trying to rip off 10 pounds in the last day.
no, we
That's
do not
smart.
want to do that
That's smart.
for sure.
You wrestled 125, Bader, at a point.
Yeah, I did wrestle 125 at a point.
So, you know,
I cannot make 125 before the NCAA championships this year in a healthy manner.
okay.
41,
Same. I was
doable. 33 might be
157.
a stretch. You're gonna make 57? No, you said 65.
No, I'm saying no. I can't make 57. I was 157, and I wasn't cutting very hard to 57 at the time. But yeah, I'm gonna do 65. I think.
All right, all right. All right, let's move on. The NJRTC, man, you guys been very busy. Specifically Nate Jackson, but a lot of the guys and ladies been wrestling all over the place.
Yeah, it's been great. Just the Ivies not having wrestling. I kind of joke with Nate. I thank him daily. I'm like, you're giving me wrestling opportunities today. Keep taking them, man. I just want to be in somebody's corner. I joke about that, but in terms of like just I've been doing this my whole life. I need to be in somebody's corner, coaching somebody. I need to be on some trip. My wife was about ready to kick me out of the house, you know, about 3 months ago. So these events probably saved our marriage a little bit, just in terms of me getting out and just being happier and just seeing these guys wrestle. That's what we need. And I'm super appreciative of everything that's going, especially Flo. You guys have been doing an amazing job. And Nate I think he has the most senior level matches of any guy since last year. I think Reese tallied it up. And then CJ Brucky's been on a tear too. He might have the second most actually. And so we've been all over the place, and we've been having a heck of a good time. And I'm just really appreciative for the club that we can have these opportunities, for sure. And I hope that they continue in the future. I think for you guys at Flow, it's sort of like the next challenge next year is to figure out how to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I think like I said, we've taken a huge, we've evolved a lot over this period in terms of with these events and how exciting it is. So, man, I hope we find some way to keep them around because it's really cool. But yeah, the NJRTC's rocking. We're looking to add some more athletes, and so it's good. I'm grateful that I'm in the position I'm in, and I get to go travel and see these guys wrestle for sure.
And to your point, I think the sport of wrestling, the community has been very nimble and been able to pivot and being very creative. And like you said, making opportunities out of this really pretty damn crappy situation around the globe, right?
Yeah.
Like, so,
100%.
yeah.
I think it's what we do best in terms of like wrestlers, right? Like we're good with adversity.
Yeah.
Like throw something at us, and we'll figure out a solution, and we'll grind to get it done too. So yeah, I'm so thankful. If anything, the best thing that came out of this whole situation is these events for sure.
Because we've all been through adversity, right? We've all gotten our butts kicked. We've all like it's just happened to everyone. I wanted to circle back to women's wrestling that we're talking about at the beginning of the show. And once women's wrestling is introduced at the NCAA and Division I level and it gets going, how instrumental will that be to making sure what happened to Stanford doesn't happen? What happened to ODU and programs that are getting chopped? Is it a gender thing to some degree, or to what degree?
Well, it's an easy target. I'll put it to you that way. Even if it isn't a gender Title IX thing, you have a sport that has no counter sport, and so that becomes something. When you eliminate the team, it sort of just disappears. If you look at William and Mary, interesting situation down there is they cut some men's teams, but not the women's teams. I don't recall if it were swimming or track. I'm not sure. But the funny thing is about that is not the funny thing, but the interesting thing is the women's side of the sport that still had varsity status. They said they're not going to compete unless you bring the men back. So then you still had people on campus after the sport's cut. You have these women advocating, these women athletes advocating for the men's team to come back, where in most cases, if you eliminate that wrestling team, like once it's gone, there's nobody on campus left that's doing the sport.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I think that there's Title IX issues probably at some places that draws attention. The pandemic financial situation isn't helping anything. So yeah, women would strengthen it a ton. Well, you're just adding so many more participants, so many more minds to the program, to the school, and it's just I think that without a doubt, it will do amazing things to increase the strength of our sport overall, college and through all the other levels as well.
And I was recently watching like one of your first videos ever on Flow. I don't know if we have it or can pull it up, but it's more like I remember you were talking with I think Zeb or somebody about there was a question, is your program safe, and is there a chance you might get dropped? And you just talked about the support and the alumni, and there it is. We don't have to put the audio on, but if we can pull this over. This is a skinny Chris Ayres back in the day.
That was vintage, yeah.
Oh, 09, I think. So you're strapping young buck. But did you ever, and you've been there for I think over a decade, was there ever a case where you felt like either maybe not my program's gonna get dropped, or there's a chance, or there's a consideration? Did you ever feel that?
I never felt that ever, not one time. Just financially, we're in a very good situation, endowment wise. And then, support wise, from the day I stepped on Princeton's campus to become the head coach, I felt really supported by the administration. And there's been a lot of turnover in those roles. This is I think my 14th or 15th year there. So I've always felt really supported. It was just like we had an army, and I was like, I don't see how they could ever get rid of us. And there were some really bad years there. I mean, my first 2 years, we didn't win a dual meet. There was one point where we had 13 guys on the team. We didn't win a match at EIWAs, and that was just a result of like we just needed to add more people, the right people. And so there were moments where it was pretty low competitively. Not that the guys didn't give a lot, or those guys, we just didn't have the manpower to get it done. But then once we got the manpower, we turned this thing around. So I never really felt like that was an option ever at Princeton.
And one other thing I remember you said in that video, you said, if we're gonna do it, the time is now. And you said not like now, this moment, but if it's gonna happen, it's gonna.
Bella, like I don't want them to feel like they have to wrestle.
Yeah, but I
freaking want them to.
I want her to so bad.
Yeah.
I don't.